And we are live. Thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you for Kathleen for episode 2 of LinkedIn Live. I'm super excited to be on here. My name is Lisa Danforth. I'm a business strategist and leadership vision coach. And today I am here with KBK, Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, who is the founder of KBK Wealth Connections. Check her out.com. She's also a wealth psychology expert, and she serves the financial service, the professional arena. She services them and their clients. Kathleen is also an author, a speaker, and a podcast host. Check out her podcast, Breaking Money Silence. It is awesome as well. She's also a dear friend and a colleague and an avid outdoor enthusiast. So enthusiast, you like how I said that? So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into this industry and whatnot? Because today Kathleen is going to be sharing 3 habits to help you with your negotiation skills so that you can make a little more money. So I just want to say shout out to Candace Haza, who just showed up. Hey, Candy.
Hey, Candace, nice to meet you. So all those things you said, I thought, wow, I'm kind of tired, but how did you get there?
That's because you were up between 2 and 3 in the morning.
No, and ask me the question again. I know this is live, and so ask me.
That's the beauty of live, right? It's not perfect, which is great. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into this industry? Because this is just such a specialized skill, right? So you are breaking taboos. You're shattering taboos about money silence so that people can have conversations. That's not something that everyone sort of jumps into and says, hey, let's just do that.
Yeah, that wasn't a major in college is what you're saying. So the short of it is that I have a great interest and a background in psychology and women's empowerment and helping women find their voice and speak up and take care of themselves. And after I had a career in that arena, I really started to think about, both for myself as well as for my clients at the time, what are other ways in which we need to take care of ourselves? And I've always been passionate about gender equality, and believe it or not, interested in finance. So I actually decided that I would create my company, KBK Wealth Connection, in 2006, 2007. And I took everything I love from women's empowerment and the psychology of behavior, the psychology of wealth and money. And I took everything that I really liked from business strategy, banking, and finance, which I had a little background in as well. And I blended them together. And to be honest with you, I didn't know how it was going to go. I am a true entrepreneur, but I worked hard and I thought really about kind of what the need was in the market and what I was passionate about, which was, once again, that empowerment piece, that using your voice, having that finance can be fun. That's another big one for me. And decided to train professionals because I thought I could have a bigger impact. So a train the trainer model to begin with. And then most recently, I'm very excited that even though I said I was tired, I have the bandwidth to actually start to work with individual women entrepreneur clients again. So that part has been really energizing as well.
I absolutely love that. And it is so incredibly necessary. We're not taught how to communicate effectively and efficiently and directly, right? But especially about money. So I just love the fact that you're getting out there and sharing all this brilliance and the knowledge so that people can be more comfortable, but also really kind of focusing on the skill set specifically for women, because I think it is a little bit harder for women. Over the years, we haven't always spoken up about money and had our independence and communicated about it. What's one tip? We haven't jumped into the habits yet, but what's one tip for communication? Because that is key, but everything is foundational with communication. Our relationships are foundation for communication, our businesses and our careers. So what's one tip for communication with what the work that you do, the impact that you're making, that you could say, that you could share with us?
I think one of the things that I've learned over time is that in terms of communication, I've always been a direct communicator. But when I was younger, I was a little too direct. And so really figuring out how to, in a very strategic, professional way, communicate your message and really help people understand where you're coming from, but most important, when I teach financial advisors, when I teach professionals, when I think about myself and what my learning edge, it's really stepping into the other person's shoes. So if I'm much more curious about what's going on for you in a money conversation or a business conversation, I am more likely to foster trust, to get really important information, to learn something. And then there will be time to talk about me and what my stuff is and what my services are. And so I think the more curious I get, and the older I get, actually, the more curious I get, the better my communication skills. And so I really try to teach and encourage people to be curious and to wonder and to make it less about them and more about the other person.
I think you're so right on that trust piece. Really, we need to have that safety, that safe space to show up and have that conversation. Maslow, I think, had it 100%. We need that before we can even make it to the next level of where we want to go. So that's a perfect thing. So awesome. Thank you. So let's just jump right in. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 habits that are going to help you with your negotiating skills so that you can make more money. Shattering taboos all over the place here. So let's just jump into number 1. Kathleen, do you want to share the first one that you'd like to?
Sure. Because I come from a psychological background, I always think about how do you think and feel about money? What are the mindsets that you have when it comes to negotiation? And so I always think that the first habit you need to develop is to be able to tap into what I call your negotiation mindset. And basically that is the sum of all your attitudes, beliefs, feelings about negotiating. So if you go into a negotiation and you're thinking, oh, I hate confrontation, I don't want to negotiate, then chances are you are going to be uncomfortable, probably not communicate as effectively, and chances are maybe not get as much as you could have had you gone in with a different mindset. And so part of what you need to do is just start with your baseline. Like, what do you think about negotiation? Not judge it right or wrong, but look at where are the areas where you can kind of build that muscle up and maybe shift your mindset. And for me, I know I used to not like negotiation. I was raised that you don't negotiate. It's insulting to the other person. And then I married my husband, who is like the king of negotiation and sales. And so I have shifted my mindset over time that negotiation is a conversation where both of us can win. And it actually sometimes, dare I say, can be a little fun.
I love that perspective, definitely. Because when we approach it with an opinion, our personal opinion of this is going to be really hard, or I stink at negotiation, that directly impacts the outcome of what's going on. And I'm a firm believer that our first negotiation is with ourselves. Right?
Oh, love
How
that.
are we going to show up? What is it that we want? And getting really clear on what are our negotiables and what are our non-negotiables. And like you said, that is absolutely all mindset, getting very clear and intentional, yet really looking at, again, that conversation that we're having with ourselves and how that's impacting our mindset, our confidence, and our bottom line.
I think the thing that's so challenging is that there is no, in my opinion, right mindset to have for negotiation. There's certainly more healthy mindsets. There's things that can help you. But a lot of the negotiation gurus out there kind of give you a set system, and that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm of the belief that you have to really go inside and think about what's going to work for you and what are the ways in which you can show up as the best negotiator possible. And yes, that starts with the internal work. So in order to develop that habit, in order to, beyond just, starting to look at what are your automatic thoughts, it's really tuning into what's going on in your head when you are in a negotiation, whether you're prepping for one, whether you're in that actual negotiation talk, or whether you're debriefing. And so if you turn up the volume on those automatic thoughts and beliefs, you're gathering really useful data that's going to help you understand where are you strong and where are the areas that you might need to build the muscle or get a little coaching or just, practice, whatever it might be. So that's how you can kind of reinforce that habit by tapping into that mindset on a regular basis.
Where would you say in your years of experience with this is the largest area of opportunity, area for growth in the mindset? Like what one opportunity, AKA struggle, do you find that shows up more often than not? Is there sort of a golden thread there?
I think that two things come to mind. The first is in terms of a negotiation, often people have the thought that there's a winner and a loser and it's a conflict.
Mhm.
It's a fight. Like the winner, whoever's going to win is going to get the
Going
most money.
down.
And I think historically in a traditional male business world, back maybe in the 50s, that was the way it worked. But really, what is so vital is to make sure that in any negotiation, both parties get as much as they each can. So they each walk away feeling satisfied. So it's not about winning. It's about standing up for yourself and collaborating and appreciating the other person's point of view and their needs as well. And I find when I approach a conversation with that mindset, and I coach other people to do that it goes really well. I think the second thing that comes to mind is much more of a women-centric thought, which is, I'm going to be seen as rude or nasty or greedy, and I should just be fortunate to have this job or to have this client. Oh, you had a reaction to that one. So do you hear that one a lot? Like, I should just be lucky that I have work.
I hear that all the time, and it really relates back to always wanting more, right? I think having dissatisfaction within our life, and I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback on this, is not a bad thing. It's when the opinion of the dissatisfaction of where you're at or where you want to be impacts the way that we show up and continue to move forward. Daniel,
Time out. So are you going to get pushback from me?
no.
So I'm supposed to be dissatisfied and happy? Is that what you're saying?
No, that
I'm just playing devil's advocate for the audience.
yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. We're going to talk about that later. No, just kidding. No, I love. See, this is what I love about you is it's a truly dynamic conversation. So know that I should be happy. We should all over ourselves all the time, and we need to stop shoulding. Stop the shoulding, right? Okay. But it is okay to want more, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with your money, your career, your business, your health. I mean, health, we always want to be, it's always good to be healthy. But there's a level of dissatisfaction that motivates us and inspires us to move forward and learn more, build our skill sets, get better at what we're doing, improve in our skills. Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive, and there are three components to intrinsic motivation. And one is constant mastery, right? So aspiring to always improving ourselves and the surrounding, what surrounds us.
Uh-huh.
So within that dissatisfaction, it's when we judge it, like, oh, it's not good enough. It's not, I'm not making enough money, or they're not nice enough, or whatever it is. But it's okay, this is wonderful, and I have an amazing amount of gratitude for what I have, yet I want a little bit more. And where do we go with there? And so taking that lens off from, how we have always shown up, seen and experienced life, and looking at, okay, if I can be, I am incredibly grateful with where I'm at. And what would more look like if I turned my life up 25%?
Yeah.
What would that look like? And how could I create impact at that level?
That makes sense. It's so what I resonate with in terms of the work that I do is that self-judgment. So I'm actually, for people who don't know, a recovered therapist. I mean, I mentioned that a little bit, but so when I was practicing therapy, I would talk a lot about when you have a feeling, sitting with the feeling and not judging the feeling, because whatever you're feeling, it's a feeling. And I know that, people out there and live land are rolling their eyes or when they watch this back, but it's true. And it becomes problematic when we then start to get our brain into saying we should. And so I think that's what you're talking about, that it's okay to want more. And I think with money in particular, there are so many mixed messages for women out there about what it means to be a woman who is profit motivated. I mean, that is actually still, as crazy as this sounds, in our society, something that's frowned upon. And when you look at research around female breadwinners, what you find is that female breadwinners, actually 40% of them hide their breadwinning status from their friends and family because they don't want to be judged. So there's a way in which, we talk a lot about, closing the gender gap, negotiating. And then we look at, well, how complicated that gets for women. And I'm not saying that it's easy for men. I'm not saying that by any stretch. But there's this double bind for women that when you do negotiate, when you do ask, that you're more likely to be judged harshly, not only by yourself, but also by the person that you're negotiating with. So those are some kind of tricky things that, emotionally you need to work through. And also, I think, developing the skills and the thick skin to say, you know what, sometimes it's not about me, it's about that other person, and letting it go.
I also want to ask that when you don't ask, then we get well, you don't make as much money because you simply don't ask for as much
Mhm.
money. So just to get that other side of that double bind, which is incredible. And like you said, there's an equal double bind for men, just different. It's not minimizing one or the other. So
Right. And I think, the not ask, I always say you can negotiate down, but you don't typically negotiate up, and you never know till you ask. So it's building up enough confidence and self-understanding to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to ask. And if you have a effective negotiation conversation and the answer ends up being no, a lot of the fears that people have don't come true. Like, typically you don't lose a client. And if you do lose a client, it often is a client in the long run you didn't want to work with. And you actually feel better. I mean, you've been a businesswoman for a long time, and so have I. We've all had those situations where you say yes and you're not getting paid your value, and then later you're resentful.
mhm.
And, I would rather not sit with that resentment and self frustration. I'd rather sit with the discomfort of, okay, I'm going to walk away from this, because that lasts maybe, I don't know, an hour, a
Mhm.
day. And living with a client that's underpaying you,
Mhm.
that can last a long time because they often don't go away.
I just spoke with a client today who just increased her fees by like about a third. And the person didn't even blink an eye. She was,
Mhm.
so there was no real negotiation other than with herself to ask for more money. And she was like, "Oh, I should have asked for more money earlier." Right.
It
So,
is interesting because what's in our head, like, often what will
right.
happen is very similar. Like, we make up all these stories about how clients are going to fire us and what's going to happen. And I actually had an incident a long, long time ago when I was first learning to negotiate and raise my fees. And I was in the helping profession, right, where you're not supposed to be profit motivated at all. And you're supposed to be selfless. And I can remember I raised my fees like $10 a session. And the woman across, my client, actually looked at me and she goes, I have been waiting for like 2 years for you to raise your rates.
Yeah, they're
And
not going to
the
ask you.
last thing I thought she would say to me. So, you're role modeling something too, I think, to other women and to other men and to the next generation, that it's okay to ask and to take care of yourself financially.
Bam, that was a mic drop. We can be done right now.
All righty. Well,
All right.
I got to
Number
go.
two. Let's move on to number two. You said to negotiate more. Can you share a few
Yeah.
more? What does that mean for a habit? Can you define it for us?
So negotiating more means, first of all, looking, where do you negotiate in your life already? And let's put money aside for a minute because money is so charged. Let's just talk about, in general, how people go through life, and especially women, negotiating. I mean, you wake up in the morning, and if you have a family or a partner, you're probably negotiating, what are you going to have for dinner? Who's picking up the milk on the way home? If you have kids, who's going to pick up Johnny? Who's going to drop off Susie? What your social calendar looks like. So we have all of these different negotiations that happen. We just don't think of them as negotiations. So part of what I have people do is I say, in order to develop the habit of negotiating is to negotiate more. So to look in your life at things that are less threatening than money and start with them. It may be money if you're ready to go there. But a lot of times it could be, the next time your husband or your partner says, could you just swing by and pick up some milk on the way home? Instead of saying yes, which a lot of women do, you could say, tonight it's not going to work for me. Could you do that and I do it tomorrow? That's a negotiation. And it's just learning to kind of have this push and pull in a way that's less threatening. The first time I really did a successful negotiation was my husband and I had, when we were young, we're not that young anymore. We've been married a long time, but when we were first getting our house and getting furniture, my husband, because he's a good negotiator, we walked into a furniture shop and he said to me, he whispered to me and he said, okay, this is how we're going to play it. You don't want that dining room table. I can still picture this. You don't want that dining room table. You want it in black, not in that lovely chestnut. And so we played good cop, bad cop, and it actually ended up being a fun experience. And I still have that dining room table. And so what I learned from that was you never know till you ask, and you can have fun with it. So without him, I think it was a week or two later, I went to the cell phone company and I was getting a new cell phone. And Brian had taught me the phrase, "Is there anything else you can do for me?" And so as I'm about to pay for my new cell phone and my new package, I went to the mall and got it. I just looked at the gentleman who was very nice. And I said, "Is there anything else you can do for me?" And he literally threw me free stuff, free accessories. And it was just because I asked and I was unattached. So part of this is negotiating more and thinking about how you can have that more in your life and develop that habit. If you do it with things that you are less emotionally attached to, and not money, and really build up that muscle, then you can be ready to say, okay, I can tackle negotiating about money. So it just becomes something that you do in life as opposed to this big, ooh, I'm going to negotiate. And it's fun.
I love the way that you said it, because it does make it fun and you can actually be playful with it, and it takes the stigma out of it.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, and, I'm mentioning women because I primarily work with women entrepreneurs, but, I think men get a bad rap here because we often assume that they just pop out of the womb and know how to negotiate and are, financially fit. And that's not true. So I think a lot of these tips can work for anybody who is really looking to understand their psychology of negotiation and then practice that as a habit.
So I have one question to take this one a little bit deeper. What would you suggest to make it a habit to be thinking negotiation, whether it's picking up the milk? Because we need to negotiate more, but it's so easy to get through our day and continue doing things the way that we've always been doing them. So is there a habit, a trigger sort of thing that you could suggest for people that's going to help them remember, put it at top of mind to, okay, I'm going to negotiate this?
Well, I think in the very beginning, it's each week deciding one thing you're going to negotiate. So being very thoughtful and purposeful about it, because it isn't part of what you normally do. So it could be going to CVS, asking for something behind the counter and saying, and for some people, it's just the no, just the initial, and saying, I've changed my mind. Can you put that back? Or it may be on the weekend going to a flea market and saying, I'm just going to ask for bargain, knowing that bargaining is part of flea markets. So it's in the beginning, set once a week, what is something I'm going to negotiate? Go very, very small, because in terms of behavioral change, you want to set yourself up for success and feeling good about it. And you want to learn, no matter what the outcome is, you want to learn about yourself and about the experience. Then as you start to progress in negotiating, I think more often you'll stop and think and go, oh, do I have to just say yes to this? Or is this something that maybe I can negotiate? And so it's just tuning your mind into these opportunities. But at first, be very, very purposeful, because it's easy not to do it, especially if you're fearful of negotiation.
I love that. Purposeful. Be purposeful. That's good in any area of life. So
be purposeful.
Be purposeful. The word I use is intentional. When we show up.
I'm sorry to giggle, but I just think we should have shirts on. Be purposeful.
Be intentional.
Swag. Yeah.
Then you get to put my necklace that probably would not be appropriate. All right. Number three, practice.
Yeah.
10,000 times.
Oh, I knew you were going to give that stat.
I'm predictable. Darn it.
So when I'm talking about practicing, it's a little bit different than the other one. It's practicing money conversations and negotiation conversations, because saying the words out loud matters. So I am a keynote speaker, and it's part of what I do. And if I get up on stage and I haven't practiced and verbalized the words and thought about how things are going to go, what's going to happen that would be good, what are the roadblocks I need to overcome, my keynote is not going to be as good. Exactly the same thing with negotiation. And so I still do this, even though I negotiate much more than I used to, and I feel much more confident in doing it. But really thinking about, before the negotiation, what's your bottom line? I think you mentioned that, Lisa. What's your bottom line? What are you willing to negotiate? And by the way, even in a money negotiation, it doesn't always have to be money. So it may be time, some sort of benefit, it could be a lot of different things. But saying to yourself, you know, what is it that I'm willing to negotiate and what's my bottom line? And just having that in mind before you get into the negotiation conversation. And then when you are practicing, practice with a trusted friend, your partner, whoever, a coach, financial advisor, whoever's willing to practice with you, and be able to tell them what are the things you're afraid are going to happen. What are the roadblocks that you're concerned about? And then what I want you to do is I want you to role play what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and then what's the likely scenario. Because in our head, we can catastrophize things or we can glaze things over. And often reality is somewhere in between. And and I know, trust me, I was in college and when I was, a young professional, role play, right? Yuck. Got to tell you, it works. So find somebody, giggle a lot when you're doing it, and just get those words out there. It does help because when you're in the live situation, that practice, those words, that anticipation, even if something new gets thrown at you, really helps you be able to kind of pivot in the moment.
I think that's great. And I love how you said not to have it be so structured. I know for me, when I'm practicing something, whether it's a talk or whatever, even the LinkedIn Live, it's been an effort for me to not have it be structured, right? Put into a nice neat box. It's really great.
Wow, that's surprising, actually.
I know. I hide it well, don't I?
Wait, look, I just don't capture that as the screenshot. Okay.
But to have clarity and a structure, right? So just more a structure to allow you to be fluid. So if you were to show up and give a keynote and you had absolutely, no practice whatsoever, you're probably going to have a very difficult time and lose the audience. But if you're so structured, you could also have a very hard time and lose the audience. So just practicing and seeing where your strengths are in the conversation, see where your weaknesses are in the conversation, and really look at the obstacles that could pop up so you can prepare for them.
And I'm sure, and maybe you will be able to articulate this better, but I'm sure there's some neuroscience behind this. But what I find is everybody has to find their own way of practicing. So for instance, some people memorize so then they can be improvisational. And some people just say it different ways and then they can be improvisational. But I think you're right. If you are able to role play the negotiation conversation, you are able to then really just go with what's happening in a new way. The other thing that I do, which isn't one of our tips or habits, but I just want to say is I write down on a little piece of paper if I'm on the phone or even on Zoom, like what my bottom line is in writing before I get on that call. Because emotionally, all of a sudden, oh, they're a nice person, or, oh, they don't really have a lot of budget, or and then all of a sudden that number's going down. So write what your ultimate goal is, what your bottom line goal is. You don't need to share that with them. But that's going to help you see it in writing and go, oh, that's what I thought before we were engaged in this conversation.
And practice saying it. You could have it written down, but when someone says, you know what, this is awesome, I want to work with you. How much is it? You don't go, it's $5,000.
No.
Right? So
here's my favorite. No, Lisa, here's my favorite. And people do this all the time, and I politely correct them. And I'm sure I've done it as well. So I'm not being super judgy about it. But you go, so that's $8.95, an hour. But if you don't want to pay $8.95 an hour, I can do $7.95 an hour. In fact, I think you'd be a great client. Why don't we do $5.95 an hour? And the potential client prospect has said nothing. So that's the negotiation with yourself. And so I say to people, one of the skills, and it's a skill, I don't know if it's a habit, maybe it is to just say that number. And you're right, practice saying it out loud. Say the biggest number you can, and then shut up.
I was just going to say that is every single coach I've ever worked with, and I'm a voracious reader, is put the number out there and then let there be silence. Don't fill the gap because they're thinking. And when you speak, you're taking their opportunity away to be thinking about it. First, you want to connect them with the transformation that you're going to give them, whether you are asking for a salary and the transformation within the team or the company, right? They're thinking about that. Or as a coach, if I put a number out there, I need to connect them to the transformation of what my work does. So that needs to be within the practice before you say the number, but I can't stress enough. Say that, walk around your house $60,000 to work with me. It's $100,000 to work with me.
Mhm.
And just say it over and over and over. So when you're on that negotiation call or in person at some point, hopefully soon,
Yeah. Let's hope so.
yeah, that it literally is going to roll off from your tongue, and you can actually look them in the eye when you're saying it, as opposed to, well, it's $60,000.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'd take 50.
Well, and I think, if we think about why do people fill the space? They fill the space because they're anxious, they're worried, they're concerned, they're not confident. It's just the way in which many of us deal with that type of emotion. Certainly, I have the gift of gab, so that's the way I would go. And so I think everything you're saying is right. I mean, if you can look at your negotiation mindset, really start tapping into those thoughts and beliefs about negotiation and build on your strengths and reframe the things that might be your blind spot. If you can look for ways in your life that you negotiate or can practice that muscle that either do or don't involve money, and then you find somebody to role play with where you can really practice. And this isn't, by the way, something you do once in your career. It's an ongoing journey, your relationship with money and your relationship with negotiating. And so, you find out new things about yourself all the time. And so it's once you get in the mode of, wow, I'm going to learn a lot, and this is going to be curious, and you start to have some successes in terms of landing the deals that you want, it feels really good. And that builds
Well, it does.
confidence. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely don't get what we don't ask for. And I love the example, like you shared, that of your client. I've been waiting for you to raise your
Yeah.
rates. People aren't going to offer you more money. And here's the thing: is when you do lose a deal or you do lose a job, that is an excellent opportunity for growth and learning and education. Right. So
Yes.
where was it when you can debrief with yourself afterwards? Where did the conversation switch? What was it that you missed? Where else could you have shown up? What more research could you have done before entering into the conversation of
Yes.
negotiation?
And I'll add one more thing. What also might it have been about for the other person?
Well, there's a good one.
Because we have a habit of personalizing. And so you want to do exactly what you just said. But I would add that other piece of, okay, if it was not about me, I've learned all these things about me, but if it was not about me, and in a compassionate way, not in a judgment way, what might it be? Oh, that person doesn't have the budget to give it to me, or, oh, they didn't see the value, or, you don't know what's going on for the other person. So really kind of doing that piece as well. And eventually I find that if you trust, and it's hard to do it gets easier over time, but if you trust that you will find the right clients or the right business or the right job with the right money, it ends up showing up if you do the work.
Absolutely. Listening when you're speaking with people, listening with the intent to understand and not just simply to be understood, I think it's really important. And then negotiation is just so much easier because you have the words, you have their words, and you know that you can serve them at the level that you want to serve them. So this has been wonderful.
I love breaking money silence with you.
It's always fun. And I don't even think I swore this time, which was
You did once.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So quick question. Are there any resources that you can recommend that people reach out that look at if they're looking to build their skills on negotiation? Now, I know that you've got a lot of wonderful books, so feel free to share one of your books and someone else's books.
So let me talk first. I'll demonstrate negotiation and confidently marketing your business. So if you are interested in breaking money silence around negotiation, I recently launched a free course on how to conquer your fear of negotiating. And it talks specifically about the psychology pieces that we've been discussing today and offers you some skills to start to manage those emotions during negotiation. And that you can access on my website, breakingmoneysilence.com. And you go to the tab that says Learning Lab, and it will bring you right to that free course. So you can sign up for that community. There are other offerings that are going to be coming out if you decide to invest in that skill set, where you get access to me, access to a lot of different tools, tips, and resources. If you want to read a book, I also wrote a book called Breaking Money Silence, which it isn't really about negotiation per se, but it's about our relationship with money and all the different types of conversations we need to have. And if you're interested in money psychology in general, there's two books that I love, Lisa. One is called The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge, which is an older book, but it talks about money scripts, so how we think and feel about money, and how the way we think impacts our behavior and our financial health and happiness. And I love, easy read, but a great book. The other one that I really like, which is also a little bit older, is called Your Money Story, and it's by Dr. Kruger, I believe, and it talks all about how we develop money, thoughts and money stories in our head that impact all these different areas of our life. And he does go into detail around the neuroscience if brain science is something that you're into.
I love that because we can look at why we're doing the things the way that we're doing them and be able to have a different perspective to shift them. So
Train your brain.
Train your brain. So Kathleen, where can people find you?
Oh, at breakingmoneysilence.com is the best way to find me. I'm also on Twitter at KBK Speaks. I'm on LinkedIn. My full name, Kathleen Burns Kingsbury, which is up on the screen. Those are the best places to find me. And definitely shout out if you want to learn more or you have something that you feel like you either agree or disagree with. I would love to hear from people. And, my goal, very similar to Lisa, is to really just be able to empower the people that I serve and have a little fun doing it.
Absolutely. I also want to give a shout out to your podcast as well.
Oh,
There's so much wonderful information on there. Kathleen does so many interviews. There is a wealth of knowledge.
And that's also on my website at breakingmoneysilence.com.
All right. Thank you, Kathleen. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, whether you attended live or you're watching the replay. I am so grateful to have you here listening. If you found this resourceful and helpful, please feel free to share it with your community, share it with your friends. That would be wonderful. Post a comment below. I will always be popping in and answering any questions and replying, or if you have a question for Kathleen, also put that in the comment section, and I'm sure she'll be more than happy to come back. So thank you for showing up for episode 2. We will be on for episode 3 next Thursday. I'm interviewing Donna Cravata from Social Pivot PR. She has a wonderful thing called the Gather method for social media. Absolutely mind-blowing, simple, and so incredibly effective. So I hope you can join us again next Thursday at noontime East Coast time. We'll see you for episode 3. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.